guys, you all said I was huffing copium. When double tap was getting removed, I said, you know what? They're probably going to wait and see how hunters or how marksman's doing without double tap in PvE and PvP. And you all called me crazy. You said no. Marksman is doomed. Okay, not all of you guys, but a lot of people on the forums especially were like, rip marksman, it's doomed, they're never going to do anything. But guess what, boys and girls? 5% damage buff. I'm just kidding, there's actually more than this. So all hunter specs for PvE are being buffed by 5%. There's a lot of good changes in this patch, by the way. I'll link it in the info, or you could just go to like Wowhead or MMO Champion and look at all the changes. But I'm going to mostly just point out the hunter changes. So for PvE reasons, all the hunter specs got 5% damage, right? But then when you scroll down to PvP, BM's 4 pieces getting nerfed by half effectiveness. So that's good because F BM hunters, you know? I don't like NPCs doing the fighting for me, right? And then you got rapid fire and aim shot increased by another 15%. So this is why this is good. I actually forgot. I was just thinking about rapid fire and aim shot. So rapid fire and aim shot, our two main abilities are being, or two of the three main abilities. I still consider arcane shot a main ability. It actually does a large portion of your damage if you're using it regularly, especially when you have the 4 set. Those things crit for like 45, 55k sometimes, you know, depending on what kind of modifiers you have up. But arcane shots, do not sleep on those because, especially with the 4 set, it's going to increase the aim shot bonus of your 2-piece by proccing it more often, and they also hit decently hard, especially against tankier targets. Arcane shot is great against plate because our physical damage obviously does a lot less against things like DKs and paladins and warriors because of armor values, right? So arcane shot is actually pretty awesome against the tankier targets. So we're not only getting 20% damage to rapid fire and aim shot, if you combine the 5% in PvE, but then we're also getting 5% on things like arcane shot, which isn't a huge number, right? But I mean, 5%, I'll take it, you know? That means all of our abilities are going to be doing 5% more. Explosive shot, if you play that, I don't really, but serpent sting, latent poison, literally everything's getting 5% damage, and then another 15% for these two on top of that. So that's freaking awesome. Now, to offset this, unerring vision is being reduced by 50% in PvP. And a lot of people on the forums are crying about this. They're like, oh my god, they're buffing our sustain and nerfing our burst. No, idiots. You're getting more burst damage. When you get 20% damage to aim shot, for example, right? So when you do unerring vision, the biggest bonus to unerring vision is making your kill shots and your aim shots crit even harder, right? Rapid fire, I mean, rapid fire still hits pretty hard. Technically, it's going to do more damage than an aim shot without the careful aim modifier if they're over 70% health. But you've seen in my videos, and if you play marksman, you've seen it yourself, you do some pretty chunky aim shots when you have the careful aim and the unerring vision stacked and all that. I don't even stack mastery. I have a little bit of mastery with the tier set. I can adjust my stats better the way I want. I can reduce versatility because the tier pieces, a lot of them just don't have verse, and you get more haste, crit, and mastery. So I'm actually opting to once I hit like 20-ish% on crit and haste, I'm happy with that. With the build I have, I end up having like 31% crit on aim shot and rapid fire anyway with Hunter's Knowledge. So I have a pretty good crit rate. I have a lot of haste, which I like, and then once I've hit that 20% plus mark on crit and haste, I just put the rest in mastery. So I'm shifting it a little bit. I know I ignored mastery before, but now that I'm nearing completely full gear with the tier set, you actually have a little bit more wiggle room to maximize a little extra damage. So yeah, so these are great changes. I mean, Marksman's going to be way better off. People are really like crying about the 50% nerf to the so unerring vision, the crit damage is the only part being nerfed. So it's, instead of 10% crit chance, 20% crit damage, it's going to be 10 and 10, right? People think that's a nerf to our burst. So I actually decided, I cut out the part where I was trying to do this math on my own, and I'm actually going to bust out the calculator and do this properly, okay? So people think, I can't believe how dumb people are. I mean, even if you don't calculate it, it's still obvious that this is a huge increase to not just our sustain, but our burst. So let's do the math here, okay? So if you add 20%, so normal baseline would be 175% damage on a crit, right? It's that's the multiplier. As far as I know, that hasn't changed in a while. So when you take Unerring Vision for that 8-second window it's fully stacked, it's going to be 195%. Right? That'd be the modifier, almost doubling the damage. So if you take 100 damage, we're just going to use 100 damage. Nobody's going to non-crit for 100 damage, but for the sake of math, we'll just keep it an even 100, right? So a crit would be 195k, right? You would do times 1.95 is 195. Easy math, right? Now, if you take out Unerring Vision entirely, we're going to pretend that you don't spec this anymore. It's still probably worth taking, you know, but to an extent, you'll really maximize your numbers. But let's increase now that base number. Instead of 100 damage for an aim shot, right? Let's say it's 120 because you're gaining 20%. So this is the new base value after the patch because you're gaining another 20% damage to that. Now we're going to multiply it by the normal crit modifier, 1.75 equals 210. So you're doing 15 more damage, right? So instead of 195, you're doing 210, okay? So even if you never spec Unerring Vision, your top end is still going to be higher. Unless there's something with Blizzard modifiers, like the way they buff and nerf that I'm not aware of, you should be still doing more damage, even with Unerring Vision nerfed. Now, if you take that same number, 120 base, right? And then let's add the 10% from Unerring times 1.85, it's even higher. So instead of 195, it's 222, right? So assuming I'm not dumb and I understand, you know, the math here, it's pretty simple, but I'm kind of stupid when it comes to numbers, okay? But, you know, if the base crit modifier is 75%, or 175% rather, and then you take that 10%, it should still be doing more because 20% to the base value means your crits are automatically going to be hitting harder, right? And then, of course, you also have to factor in Careful Aim. Careful Aim increases the damage of aim shots. I didn't even think about this. Careful Aim further modifies based on a percentage. So I don't know if you guys know how percentages work, but it's like compound interest, okay? When you have a higher base value, any percentage increase is automatically more valuable. So if you take Careful Aim, right, and it's at 100 damage, and you times it by 1.35, right? This is a non-crit. This is just the 35% bonus from Careful Aim. That's 135. Now if you take 120 base damage times 1.35, boom, it's a much higher number. So I'm going to be honest, I feel like they probably should have nerfed Careful Aim by like 5% in addition to these changes because I'm almost scared that people who, like, I don't stack full crazy mastery because I actually think if you don't have enough haste, it's pretty bad. And if you stack like crazy amount of mastery with a little bit of crit and no haste, I feel like you're less effective because we need haste for so many reasons with our utility and stuff. We're so global starved all the time that haste just makes you able to, you know, use all of your awesome hunter utility more effectively. I'm almost afraid about what Cheese Lords do when they stack full mastery and then crit and no haste, and they just go for like big burst openers out of stealth with just True Shot and just utilizing True Shot for the super fast casts against squishy targets. I don't think the tankier targets, like anything in mail or plate, I don't think is going to be super duper scared, but I think things in leather that don't have a defensive up and like basically if we get good RNG and we crit a lot and we're not interrupted in CC during True Shot, you know, and it's a squishy target, I'm almost afraid we might do too much damage to them, you know what I mean? Because we already do pretty good damage to mages because they're the squishiest, right? They have the lowest armor, they don't have any passive mitigation really. I already feel like we do, like mages are probably the thing we do best against right now, and then we're just a lot weaker against anything with higher armor or better defensives, right? But I'm almost afraid, you know, because when you buff the base value that much and you don't touch the modifiers, like they touch this one modifier, which is good, but I'm almost worried. Like, I don't want us to be just OP, just globaling mages, because you have to remember, at a high level of play, a lot of people are still going to counter when you pop True Shot. A lot of high-level players are going to counter you, and they're going to shut you down during True Shot a lot, right? So at higher levels of play, I don't think it's going to be as oppressive. But I feel like at lower levels, when people aren't good at reacting and noticing cooldowns as well, I feel like there's going to be a lot of low-level mages just getting domed by mastery stacking hunters. But we'll see. Maybe I'm slightly wrong on the math. We're going to see how it goes. But I think this is going to make us a lot more viable against the tankier targets. Because things like DKs and warriors and even paladins, you know, are like very hard for us to deal consistent damage to. and even like Ellie Shamans, because they're male and they wear a shield. As far as I know, they still wear a shield. They're reasonably tanky against our damage, which is mostly physical, so this is going to help us a lot versus the classes that we historically just tickle. So these are good buffs, but, you know, I hope they, you know, if it gets too crazy, maybe they tone down careful aim slightly, just because, you know, you got to be careful when you up the base damage and don't touch other modifiers, but we'll see. Now, this change I was actually really excited for at first, because when you test on a target dummy, Chimera and Arcane Shot, even on the PvP target dummy, which doesn't seem to have the proper PvP modifiers, I tested it on the target dummy and I got all excited because Chimera Shot and Arcane Shot hit and crit for about the same damage on the PvP target dummy. But then somebody in my community Discord pointed out that when they tested it on a player, Chimera Shot was actually doing far less damage on players. I don't know if this is an old modifier that they're trying to revert by doing this, or if Blizzard is actually unaware that Chimera hits, because, like, I don't know how they do these numbers or what it looks like to program this shit, but either this change is just to make Chimera Shot the same as Arcane Shot again, the way it should be in PvP originally, or maybe they're unaware that there's already a modifier nerfing it in PvP. Because somebody was saying that they used to be nerfed, both of them used to be nerfed in PvP, they unnerfed it for Arcane Shot, but this here isn't stating that they're unnerfing, because usually when they unnerf something, they do this, right? Incoming crowd control by 30%, and then in parentheses, was 20%. There's no was here, so I almost feel like this is a mistake, and they didn't realize that Chimera Shot's actually doing less damage than Arcane Shot in PvP. So if that's the case, we need to point that out to them. And maybe this is intended and they're just bumping it back up to be the same level. But this is just going to put Chimera Shot on the same level as Arcane Shot right now. So this is not actually a buff, and Chimera Shot is actually inferior. I have an inkling that they're going to improve our cleave, like Arctic Bull and Chimera Shot breaking CC. I think it'll be smarter with targeting and not just break traps and stuff soon, because they've been doing a lot of stuff like that lately, correcting those things. But I'm really hoping that this is a mistake, because it'd be cool with our 4-set especially to use Chimera Shot in PvP if it actually did more damage than Arcane Shot. Because right now, after this 5% buff, I mean, you're going to see consistent like 50k Arcane Shot crits. If you added 30% to that, you know, you'd be seeing like 65, 70k Arcane Shot or Chimera Shot crits, which would be cool. So as it is right now, Chimera Shot's not going to be worth taking unless this is not intended and they also revert the previous nerf modifier in PvP. Also, the downside of Chimera Shot is the projectile is much slower than Arcane Shot, which really sucks when you're trying to quickly kill totems. Also, if you do like an aim shot, Arcane Shot, they hit about the same time because Arcane Shot travels so fast. Whereas with Chimera Shot, they're going to hit on a like slightly separate apart, and so I'm not a big fan of that. So as it stands right now, Chimera Shot won't be worth taking. But this alone, the 5% flat buff and the rapid and aim shot 15% in addition, is actually huge, despite nerfing Unerring Vision. And I actually agree with this. I think there's too many modifiers, because if you have a trinket proc, your weapon enchant, you know, your scope proc, and then you have the careful aim modifier because they're over 70% health, and then you crit, and you have Unerring stacked, and you have your 2-set to put 40% extra damage on that big juicy. You know, it's over time, but still you're adding 40% damage to like a super modified aim shot, and then you're hitting a cloth target like a mage, right? The damage, there's so many modifiers, especially when you account for armor values of classes. You know, some are squishier. Like to a warrior, it's not going to be that much damage, but to a mage, it's going to absolutely, he's going to pucker his bum, you know what I mean? So I totally agree with this. I think for a lot of classes, the big problem is too many modifiers, too much on the top end, and not enough consistency. This is going to make our low end higher, and our high end will basically be more or less the same. It'll actually, our top end will actually be higher if you're not counting Unerring Vision, because the uptime on Unerring Vision is, you know, it's a 2-minute cooldown, and that buff is only maxed out for 8 seconds every 2 minutes, right? So technically our top end is still going to be higher outside of Unerring Vision anyway. So once, you know, your true shot's down, I mean, this is just all buff, you know? So be happy, guys. Marksman is going to be a lot better come Tuesday. Anyway, I'll keep uploading clips and stuff like that, and I have links for the community Discord. I am open. I did recently decide to do coaching. I never really got big into that in the past, but if you're interested on one-on-one coaching and analyzing your gameplay and stuff like that, if you feel like that's something that you could get a lot of help with, it's a lot. I feel like when it's personalized, you can get a lot more out of it. Like if I'm watching you play and seeing exactly what you're doing right and wrong, I can steer you in the right direction better. So if you're interested on one-on-one coaching, join my community Discord. But even if you're not interested in coaching, feel free to join the community Discord and just talk about stuff. You know, I try to answer questions as much as I can in there, so feel free to join. Thanks for watching, guys, and peace out.